Happy Wednesday, 5th grade. Today what we're going to start talking about is Women's History Month. Now, as you know, Black History Month, like we've been talking about, is the entire month of February, so that's not over yet. And it's not something that we should forget about and move on from. We should still celebrate Black history. But I want to talk about Women's History Month. We're going to kind of dig into that for the next 2 weeks or so. And so today what I kind of want to talk about and kind of introduce you to is just what is Women's History Month, when do we celebrate it, why, all of that. Okay? So, first thing is first, here's the video. Should be watching that. This box here. Okay, so there's a few things that we kind of want to look at here that kind of the history of Women's History Month. Okay, so why do we celebrate it? When did it start? And some different some other very important things about Women's History Month. So, the first thing that you need to know, this celebration, it was not really started as, Black History Month was started as one person and a group of people, and they kind of kept saying, we need to continue to celebrate this, continue to push this, and there's a similar story for Women's History Month. However, it was a little bit different because it was actually started in 1978 in Sonoma, California. California. Okay, and it was actually started in a school district. Okay, so like St. Paul Public Schools is a school district, and Sonoma, California has its own school district, and they actually started celebrating women's history, just kind of as something that they knew was important, but nobody else was really celebrating it at that point. Okay, so it's a little bit different because they did not say, the whole world needs to celebrate this. They just started doing it anyways. And that was in 1978 in Sonoma, California, and like I said, that was a school district. And then a few years later, actually 2 years later, President Jimmy Carter, so he was the president in the late 1970s and the early 1980s. Okay, he was the president. He declared Women's History Week, and that was in the year 1980. Okay, so you can see how it went from just something that people wanted to celebrate, where only in 2 years, the President of the United States said, we should dedicate an entire week to talk about women's history in not only the United States, but all over the world. Okay. So then moving forward a little bit, it took about 6 years. It was then designated for the month of March in 1986. And so 6 years later, it changed from 1 week to 1 month. So took a couple years, and then it was decided that we should spend a month on it, just like we do with Black History Month. It is very important as well, so let's spend a month dedicated to women's history. Okay? The history of very awesome and influential and very powerful women, and all of the great things that they have done for society. Okay? Before we move on to the last thing here, I do want to make sure that I use the word here designated. It was designated for the month of March. Designated is another way of saying appointed or chosen. Okay, so it was chosen then for the month of March in 1986. And so when March comes around, much like when February comes around for Black History Month, when it hits March, that's when we start celebrating Women's History Month. Okay. Now, it's similar where we're going to continue to talk about, especially when we get closer to the end of March, we're going to talk about how we can celebrate Women's History Month all year round, just like it did with Black History Month. But this is kind of the month that we really stop. Everybody kind of celebrates women's history. Okay. So, every year there is a focus. We put a focus on, yes, we're talking about women's history, but we're also going to talk about, great women artists, right? So talking about artists like Frida Kahlo, other very important women artists, and that's kind of our focus for the year, right? Maybe we talk about women engineers, right? Maybe astronauts and scientists, and maybe that's the focus for this year. However, this year, in 2021, actually, let me go back and let me check here. Women's History Month 2021 theme. Okay, yep, so here's what it is. So it is women's suffrage. So the word suffrage looks kind of like suffering, like very sad. But suffrage is actually a good thing. It does not mean suffer. Suffrage means the right to vote. And so this year, the focus is on women's right to vote. Okay, that's a very new thing in the United States. Women being able to vote. We will talk about it. It's not like, I don't mean like in the last 20 years, but it is something that was in the last decade, in the 1900s. We will talk about that on Friday. Talk about that process. Some of the very important women who pushed that forward and made that happen. Okay, but this year we're really focusing on women's right to vote. All right, jump down here to the next slide. I have two videos that I want you to watch. First one here, just kind of a little introduction, more about Women's History Month, kind of the history of it, some important things, and it's a video. It's always better to watch a video than to, read it online. It's a little bit more entertaining and more fun, so go ahead and watch that one. This one here is Kid President. You maybe have seen him before. This is back when he was young. He's a little bit older now. I think he's in high school. But he made a little rap about influential women, so go ahead and watch that. It's kind of fun. It's interesting. But yeah, move on. So you can pause here, and you can go ahead and watch those videos, and we will move on. Okay. So once you're done with those videos, then we'll continue on with this one. Okay. So how can we celebrate Women's History Month? What are a couple things that we could do as people that want to celebrate Women's History Month? Okay. So there's really three things that I'm going to talk about today. There are thousands of things that you can do, but I will kind of want to shorten it down because if I give you a lot of options, that can become overwhelming. And so here are a couple really small things that you can do that are very helpful and are ways that we can celebrate Women's History Month. So the first thing that you can do is you can visit a women-owned business. Okay, a woman-owned business. There are many businesses here in the Twin Cities that are owned by women, that are run by women and created by women. I put a link here to some. Okay, I will just warn you, this is a great website. It's got some great things here. Look, it's got even maps for you. Amazing, right? Super cool, super helpful. It does say in the title here, it does say a bad word. Okay, but we don't repeat that language. That's just something this website used to describe these awesome women. So these are things that if you want to go ahead and zoom in, you can look at some of these things. These are some things that you can do to, help support women-owned businesses. Okay, like as a matter of fact, I'm seeing one that's very close to school. So there's one by Harding right here. It looks like it is Darriette Drive-In. Looks like it's a little restaurant, pretty close to, looks like Twin Cities Academy and Harding over on Minnehaha. Okay, so it's kind of pretty close to Achieve. Achieve is up here. Right there we are. Look at us. Okay, so that's what that link is there. You can go ahead and you can look at some of those things, and that is something that you can do. I'm not asking you to make a decision today. We will talk about that later in the month for things that you can do to celebrate Women's History Month throughout the entire year. Just kind of giving you some ideas today. Another thing that you can do is to write a thank you note to a woman who inspires you. I always write one for my mom because she's a woman who really inspires me. She's done really great things with her life, and obviously she had me as a child, and she raised me, and she just was very strong, and I really appreciate her. She taught me a lot about how to grow up, and it's not always easy as a woman in business. She's in business, and so she's had to be very tough, and I've learned a lot from her. Right, so I write a thank you note every year, and I do give it to her for Mother's Day, which I know is a couple months away, but I do write it in March, and then I give it to her in a couple months when it is Mother's Day. Right, so that's something that you can do. You can write a thank you note to maybe a family member who inspires you, somebody that does a lot for you. Okay, a woman who inspires you, or just is somebody that you look up to. another option. Third thing, an option to celebrate Women's History Month is to research more about an influential woman. Okay, so influential means somebody who's inspiring, somebody who means a lot to us. And so I will say that this is something that we can definitely do, but I am telling you that we will do this starting next week, starting on Monday. We will do some more research into one influential woman. It'll be your choice. There's a lot of different options. I'll give you more idea of how that's going to work a little bit on Friday to kind of introduce it to you, and then we'll get into it on Monday. Okay, but we will do this. I think that's a very important thing for us to do. If we were in the building right now, I have so many great books that we could be reading, and we could be, spending a lot of time researching these very awesome women. But unfortunately, we are not in the building, and so we're going to do something a little bit different, but I'll explain more about that next week. Okay, so that is kind of the introduction to Women's History Month. We will talk more on Friday, like I said, about the theme of this year's Women's History Month, and that is women's right to vote. We'll talk about that on Friday. And then starting on Monday, like I said, we'll pick one individual woman, and we will do a little bit more research. I will give you some time to, narrow down your choices, so it's not just random. It's somebody that you really want to do research on, somebody that's really cool, and we can find some videos and some information on that person. Okay, office hours today at 10:05 if you need anything. Otherwise, I will see you at our normal meet times.